Welcome back. Today we're tackling a really interesting question, one that comes straight from our source material. When we talk about America's founding fathers, are we even talking about the right people?
If you ask pretty much anyone on the street to name the founding fathers, you're going to get some version of this list. These are the big six, right? The names we all learned in school, the guys who built the original United States. But here's where it gets really interesting. The source material we're digging into today makes a pretty bold claim that the America we live in right now, well, it wasn't really founded by them at all. It was founded by a completely different group of people.
All right, so let's get into it. First, we'll talk about the big six. Then we'll explore this idea that their republic was, well, lost. After that, we'll look at a couple of potential refoundings of the country. And finally, we'll ask that big question. Who are the real founders of the America we know today? Okay, so first up, let's cover the standard answer, right? This is the generation that won independence from Great Britain, the one that drafted America's core documents, the Declaration, the Articles of Confederation, and of course, the Constitution. They are, without a doubt, the OG founders. But here's the core argument from our source material, that the Federal Republic those guys created, it's gone. It effectively died. And even though we still have the same piece of paper, the Constitution, the country it governs today has been so fundamentally transformed, it's something else entirely. And this right here, this is the first huge turning point in the argument. The idea is that the Civil War wasn't just about preserving the Union. No, it was about the death of the old one and the birth of something brand new. You really have to grasp this concept of a fundamental break to understand everything that comes next. And that brings us to what some historians call a second founding of the United States, which our source says happened right there in the 1860s, in the aftermath of the Civil War. So this timeline really helps you see these moments of massive change. You've got the original founding in 1787, of course, but the source argues that what happened in 1868 and then again in 1947 was so transformative, they were basically refoundings of the entire country. So what is this second founding theory? Well, it's the idea that the 14th Amendment, in particular, completely changed the game. By redefining citizenship and rights, it essentially created a new constitution. And the way the courts have interpreted this amendment over the years has given the central government way more power than the original founders ever dreamed of. So, okay, if you go along with this theory, who are the founders of this new America? Well, according to the source, you can forget about Washington or Jefferson. The real founders are people like President Lincoln and the radical Republicans in Congress who pushed through those Reconstruction-era amendments. Guys like Sumner, Stevens, and Bingham. But why the shift? I mean, why would anyone want to replace the original founders? The source argues it all comes down to ideology. From its point of view, the original founders have just become, well, unacceptable to modern progressive thinking. Their views on race, on democracy, on a small, limited government, it all clashes. The argument is that this creates a sort of vacuum, a need to find new founders who are a better ideological fit. But wait, the story doesn't end in the 1860s, not by a long shot. The source suggests that there was another founding, maybe an even bigger one, that happened in the 20th century, and this one created the massive state apparatus that we all live with today. And in this chapter of the story, presidents like Woodrow Wilson and Franklin Roosevelt are cast as the key architects. They were the ones who really championed the idea that government shouldn't just be a neutral referee. Oh no, it should be an active player, shaping the economy, shaping society, especially when the country was at war. And wow, this really puts the change into stark contrast, doesn't it? I mean, just compare the original vision, a frugal, non-interventionist republic, with what came out of World War II under President Harry Truman. Suddenly you have a global superpower with a massive permanent military and intelligence network basically on a perpetual wartime footing. It's night and day. The source actually points to one specific pivotal year, 1947. This is when the National Security Act was passed, creating institutions we all know like the CIA and the Department of Defense. It basically gave birth to a state of permanent global engagement. From this perspective, the America we live in today, it wasn't founded in 1787, it was founded right here in 1947.
And what's really wild is that even Truman himself seemed to realize what a massive change he'd set in motion. Decades later, he actually called the CIA a Frankenstein monster. He said it had grown way beyond its original mission of just gathering intelligence and had become this tool for covert cloak and dagger operations all over the world.
Okay, so to explain how a state can expand like this, the source takes a step back from the historical timeline and brings in a specific libertarian theory. This theory kind of breaks down political power into a three-step process. First, there's a desire for power over other people. Second, you need to take their resources by force. And third, you redefine that theft as taxes to make the whole thing socially acceptable. Okay, so this brings us to the crucial point. If America has already had, multiple foundings, then who are the founders of the country we live in right now? It seems like the answer isn't so stable.
And according to the source, this process, it's still going. The hunt for founders who align perfectly with today's values means that the real founding date of America just keeps getting pushed further and further into the future. I mean, could the election of Barack Obama in 2008 be seen by some as the beginning of the real America? It's a provocative thought.
So in the end, the source concludes that this huge gap between the Founders' Republic and the modern state we have today, it's not because someone rewrote the Constitution. The text is the same. The difference is that we now interpret that same text in radically different ways, ways that justify a level of government power the original authors never, ever intended. And that leaves us with one last big question to think about. Is a nation defined by its original architects and their blueprint, or is it defined by the people who came along later and fundamentally rebuilt the entire structure right on top of that old foundation? Something to chew on.